the slave system, and during this period, 180,000 slaves in his empire and 40,000 slaves were employed in his palace alone. And to look after their needs and welfare, he set up a separate department. That's why Dilly Sultanate period totally declined during this period. Next subheading is foreign Firoz Shah Tughlaq foreign policy. Foreign policy. The foreign policy of Firoz Shah Tughlaq was marked by weakness. He lacked military ability. His attempt to bring Deccan, Bengal, and Sindh were not successful during this period. A repelling of Mongol invasions and the conquest of Nagarkot were his only military achievements. Next subheading is estimate Firoz Shah Tughlaq estimate. Historians differ about the personality and character of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. He was praised by some as just merciful and benevolent ruler. Yet another group of historians have charged him of being responsible for the downfall of the empire. Firoz Shah Tughlaq was died in 1388 AD. He was followed in quick succession by 6 puppet sultans. During their rule, the distant provinces became independent. Through Firoz Shah Tughlaq reign was well known for his administrative reforms. He did not the ability, intrepidity, and vigor of Alauddin Khilji or Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He breathed his last at the age of 80 years in October 1388. The process of disintegration of Dilly Sultanate, which had begun during the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, gained momentum under Firoz Tughlaq. Between 1388 and 1414, a weak successors ruled Dilly Sultanate period. As a result, the once mighty Turkish Empire of India was reduced to a small principality of Dilly within a decade of Firoz Shah Tughlaq death. Then Timur Shah invasions, and after the death of Firoz Shah Tughlaq was followed by a war of succession to the throne of Dilly. Out of the struggle, Nasiruddin Muhammad Shah emerged as the Sultan with Mallu Iqbal. as the Prime Minister. Due to his long-drawn civil war for 2 years, there was anarchy and disorder in the kingdom. It was under these conditions that Taimur undertook the conquest of India in 1398 AD. Taimur Shah or Taimur invaded to India in 1398 AD at the time of Nasiruddin Muhammad Shah period. The chief aim of his India expedition was plunder the riches of India. Taimur defeated the armies of the Dilly Sultan and entered the capital triumphantly. Muhammad Shah and Malik Iqbal fled away from battlefield to Gujarat and Baran respectively. Taimur ordered a general plunder and massacre for several days. Taimur inflicted more misery in India than any other conqueror in a single invasion. The prosperous Delhi was reduced to a graveyard. It was depopulated, famine and pestilence followed the invasions. To quiet Badawni for 2 whole months, not a bird moved its wing in Delhi. Ziauddin Badawni says that for 2 whole months, not a single bird moved its wing in Delhi. This is Taimur Shah invasions. Next, throne the dynasty. After Tughlaq dynasty to throne the Saiyan Dynasties. These dynasties, small years ruled in India. Saiyan Dynasty, another empire. Saiyan Dynasty ruled from 1414 to 1451 AD. Saiyan Dynasty, founder of Hijr Khan Sayyid, Hijr Khan Sayyid, he was said to be a Sayyid or a descendant of the puppet. Puppet means Kilubomma. Or Kilubomma Prabhutvaman. He was left in the Punjab as its governor by Taimur. Taking advantage of disturbed conditions at Delhi, he advanced against the occupied Delhi and started the Saiyan Dynasty. These dynasties ruled for 37 years. Saiyan Dynasty ruled for 37 years. Khizr Khan was followed by his son Mubarak Shah. The Khizr Khan Sayyid was followed by his son Mubarak Shah. Mubarak Shah. During his time, no significant development had taken place. On the other hand, he became a victim of the conspiracy of Wazir Sarwar ul Mulk. Subsequently, Prince Muhammad was declared as the Sultan, but the real powers were in the hands of the Wazir. When Muhammad died in 1445 AD, his son Alauddin Alam Shah became the Dilly Sultan. But Alauddin Alam Shah was a weak ruler. Taking advantage of his weakness, Bahanlal Lodi, the governor of Lahore and Punjab, Bahanlal Lodi attacked Dilly in 1451 AD. He was helped by the Wazir Hamid Khan. The throne of the Sultanate kingdom was occupied by the Lodi family. The rule of the Lodi Dynasty began in 1451 AD. After the death of Muhammad, the last Sultan of the Saiyan Dynasty, is defeated by Bahanlal Lodi. Then Lodi Dynasty established in Delhi on 1451 AD. The Lodi Dynasty. Next, Lodi Dynasty. Lodi Dynasty during from 1451 to 1526 AD. Three Lodi Sultans ruled over Delhi for about 75 years. Lodis were the last sultans of the Delhi Sultanate. The first Sultan, Bahanlal Lodi. Bahanlal Lodi. He ruled from 1451 to 1481 AD. Bahanlal Lodi, the founder of the Lodi Dynasty, was a great general. The Lodis were origin of Afghan. Please listen carefully. The Lodis were origin of Afghan in the Lodi Dynasty. Three sultans ruled for 75 years. Bahanlal Lodi was a great ruler in Lodi Dynasty. He defeated the ruler of Jaunpur and annexed it. He was succeeded by his son, Saiyan Lodi. He ruled from 1469 to 1517. He was succeeded by his son, Bahanlal Lodi's son, Saiyan Lodi. Saiyan Lodi, who ruled from 1469 to 1517 AD. He was the most capable ruler of the dynasty. He followed a vigorous policy of expansion and brought Gwalior and Bihar under his control. He extended his kingdom up to Bengal. All the rebels were ruthlessly suppressed by him. He built the city of Agra. Please listen carefully, all of you. Who is built Agra city? Saiyan Lodi built the city of Agra. In 1504. Please listen carefully, all of you. Who is constructed by Agra city? Tell me, anybody?
Saiyan Lodi, sir.
Saiyan Lodi. Okay. Subsequently, the capital was shifted from Delhi to Agra. Spices were employed and corrupt, disloyal officers were several punished. He was a generous man and always cared for the poor and needy. He was a great scholar in Persian. One dark feature of his character was his religious bigotry. He was very cruel.
Religious bigotry means, sir?
What? Bigotry means ఏమంటారు దానికి ఇంగ్లీష్ లో another word is tomorrow I will tell you. Bigotry means he was very cruel towards the Hindus. The third and the last ruler of this dynasty was Ibrahim Lodi. He ruled from 1517 to 1526 AD. The last ruler of this dynasty was Ibrahim Lodi. Ibrahim Lodi. He lacked statesman-like qualities of a ruler. His short-sighted policy led to his ruin, and finally the end of his line. He lost the affection of his people and the respect and goodwill of the nobles and the officials of the state. Daulat Khan Lodi, the dissatisfied governor of Punjab, Daulat Khan Lodi invited Babur to invade India. Please listen carefully. Who is invited Babur to invade India? Daulat Khan Lodi. At the same time, Alam Khan Lodi, uncle of Ibrahim, also invited Babur to attack India. Babur, who himself was anxious to attack India, was tempted by these invitations. Babur invaded India and fought against Ibrahim Lodi. Tell me, the first battle of Panipat took place on April 21st, 1526 AD. Ibrahim Lodi was defeated and killed the battlefield in first Panipat war. It was the end of the rule of the Lodi Dynasty and also the end of the Dilly Sultanate. The rule of the Mughals began in 1526 AD. With this, a new chapter began in the history of India. Next subheading is downfall of the Dilly Sultanate period. Next subheading is downfall of Dilly Sultanate. The Dilly Sultanate came into existence in 1206 AD and flourished till 1526 AD. Qutbuddin Aibak to Ibrahim Lodi were the first and the last sultans of Delhi. 5 dynasties, such as the slaves, the Khilji, the Tughlaqs, the Sayyid, and the Lodis, ruled Delhi during this period. There are several causes for the decline and fall of the Delhi Sultanate. The main cause for the decline of the Sultanate was the autocratic nature of the government. Next, the strength of the state depended on the personality of the Sultan. Next, when the weak and inefficient sultans came to power, the disintegration started. The absence of a regular law of succession undermined the strength of the Sultanate. Next point, the vast extension of the Sultanate was another factor for the decline of the empire. The policy of Muhammad bin Tughlaq added to the existent confusion. Further, the recurring Mongol invasions also weakened the Sultanate. when the Sayyid and the Lodis ruled Delhi, they had to struggle hard for their existence. Ibrahim Lodi lost everything in a single battle. Lastly, the invasions of Timur during 1398 AD and 1399 AD gave a death blow to the Sultanate. It shook the empire to its very foundation. However, the final blow to the Delhi Sultanate came from Babur invasions. Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi in the first battle of Panipat in 1526, April 21st, and founded the Mughal Empire on the throne of Delhi. This is downfall of the Delhi Sultanate period. Next subheading is administration. This is very, very important question. Describe the Delhi Sultanate administration system. Ani question వస్తుంది. ఢిల్లీ సుల్తాన్ల కాలం నాటి పరిపాలనా విధానాన్ని తెలియజేయండి. Very important this is. Administration. Don't write another students. Administration. The Delhi Sultanate was a theocratic state. Islam was the state religion. All the political institutions derive their authority from Islamic law. In conformity with the practice of the age, energy Sultan of Delhi styled himself as the deputy of the Caliph, received investiture from him and inscribed his name on the coins. All the sultans of Delhi except Alauddin Khilji and Qutbuddin Mubarak recognized the nominal sovereignty of the Caliph. Except Alauddin Khilji and Qutbuddin Mubarak recognized the nominal sovereignty of the Caliph. This is introduction. Next, first point, central government. Central government, first point. అందులో ఏ subheading Sultan. The Sultan was the head of the state. All the powers in the hands of Sultan. He was the chief source of power and justice. His word was the law. He was a despot and nobody questioned him. The real sources of his authority was based on military strength, Thus, he was a military despot. Besides, he was also religious heads of the Muslim. Hence, the powers of Caesar and Pope were combined in him. The monarchy was not hereditary in character. Whenever a sultan died, it was followed by a war of succession and general confusion. Might became the right. Most of sultans spent lavishly on the splendor of their court and luxuries. Next subheading is Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers. First one, Wazir. Indulo subheading Mali. Once again, Wazir is a PM. PM means Prime Minister. Among the ministers who assisted the Sultan, he was also sometimes known as a Wakil. He was in charge of the finance department and was also the head of the entire administrative setup. Next subheading is Diwan-e Arij. Next subheading is Diwan-e Arij is a army minister. He is a army minister, Diwan-e Arij. He can be compared to the modern defense minister. He had complete administrative control over the army. His duties included recruitment of the defense personnel, fixation of their salaries, providing equipment to the army, and deployment of the army whenever necessary. This is Diwan-e Arij duties. Next subheading is Diwan-e Insa. Diwan-e Insa. Diwan-e Insa is a royal correspondence. Diwan-e Insa was a royal correspondence, was the minister in charge of the Department of Correspondence and Records of the royal courts. All correspondence of the sultans with the provincial and local governments and foreign governments was carried on under his supervision. And next minister, Diwan-e Risalat. Diwan-e Risalat. Diwan-e-Risalat is a foreign affairs minister. Diwan-e-Risalat foreign affairs minister. And next, Sadar, who's Sadar? Next subheading is, these are all Council of Ministers. Please listen here. Sadar, who's Sadar? Is a religious endowment and charity. Sadar who's Sadar? A religious endowments and charity was another important department in the administration of the Dilly Sultanate. He supervised the management of religious institutions and also the disbursement of grant and stipends to the ulema, sheikhs, and other holy men. Next subheading is Diwan-e-Khaja. Diwan-e-Khaja is a head of the judiciary. The chief qazi or the chief justice was also the minister in charge of the Department of Justice, which was known as Diwan-e-Khaja. Next subheading is Diwan-e-Khairat. This is Department of Charity. Diwan-e-Khairat. Diwan-e-Khairat. Diwan-e-Khairat is a Department of Charity. And next, Diwan-e-Amir Kohi. He is the Agriculture Minister. Diwan-e-Amir Kohi. Diwan-e-Amir Kohi is a Agriculture Department. Department of Agriculture. And Diwan-e-Mustakraj. Next, Diwan-e-Mustakraj. Diwan-e-Mustakraj. He is a realization of arrears from collectors. Diwan-e-Mustakraj. Realization of arrears from collectors, etc. In addition, there were some important affairs which and next Council of Minister Musfafi-e-Mamalik. Musfafi-e-Mamalik is a audit and general Musfafi e Mubarak లేదా Mamalik. Musfafi e Mamalik as a audit and general. Next one, next Council of Ministry, Mushraf e Mamalik. Mushraf e Mamalik, accounts of receipts. ఈ యొక్క ముఖ్య విధి ఏంటంటే అకౌంట్స్ ఆఫ్ రిసిప్ట్స్. ముష్రిఫ్ ఈ మమాలిక్, అకౌంట్స్ ఆఫ్ రిసిప్ట్స్. ఖాజిన్ is a treasurer. Khazin is a treasurer. Next Council of Minister, Diwan-e Bandhagara, Department of Slaves. Diwan-e Bandhagara, Department of Slaves. The ministries were personal servants of the sultans and held their office as long as the sultan was pleased with them. Their advice was not binding on the sultan. Their advice was not binding on the sultan. This is Council of Ministry. Next subheading is provincial government. Provincial government. The empire was divided into a number of provinces called Iktas. Who is introduced Ikta system? Tell me, anybody? Ikta పద్ధతిని ఎవరు ప్రవేశపెట్టారు? Who introduced Ikta system in Mughal period? Tell me, anybody? Already told for you. Are you listening here? Hello? Hello? All of you students listening here? Tell me, anybody? Please respond. Pujita? Harika? Fatima? Hello? The empire was divided into a number of provinces called Iktas. They were headed by Mukti or Walis. There were 23 provinces during the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Please listen carefully, all of you. They were headed by Mufti or Walis. There were 23 provinces during the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. The provinces was a replica of the central government. Their main duties were to maintain law and order to the province and render military aid to the Sultan. In the discharge of his duties, the provincial head was assisted by provincial ministers like Wazir, Harish, and the Qazi. These provincial ministers and other important officers in the provinces were sometimes appointed directly by the Sultan. But generally, they were appointed by the governor in consultation with the Sultan. The provinces was divided into six. The provinces divided into six, headed by Sikdar. The provinces of divided into Siktas, each headed by Sikdar. The Sikdar was the head of the Sikh. He was the chief executive head of the Sikh or districts and was in charge of the maintenance of the law and order in this territory. Each Sikh was divided into programs or paraganas, sorry. Each Sikh was divided into paraganas. Sikh was divided into paraganas. Each paragana or Kashba was a group of villages. According to Ibn Battuta, the paragana consisted of about 100 villages. 100 villages. The official in a paragana were Amil, Mushrif, Khajandar, and Qazi. The Amil collected revenue the Mushrif kept accounts, and the Khajandar was in charge of the treasury. Khajandar was in charge of the treasury. The Qazi was the justice during this period. The Kotwal was also an important official in those days in local government. The Kotwal was also an important official in those days in local government. He was the polite chief of a town and was vested with important powers to maintain law and order in the town. This is provincial government and fiscal policy. The state collected 4 kids of taxes, the levy of which was prescribed by the Muslim law. The 4 taxes were Zakat, Jizya, Kharaj, Khams. Zakat, Kharaj, Khams, and Jizya. The Zakat was a religious tax paid by the Muslims as an act of pity for the benefit and welfare of their co-religionists. It was collected at the rate of 2.5 interest of the actual income or property. The Kharaj was the land revenue. Kharaj was a land revenue which varied from 10 to 50% of the agriculture produced. It was payable in cash or in kind. The Khams was the state share of war body, 1/5 of what was the acquired in the war was taken as the share of the state. The jizya was a tax collected from the Hindus. Jizya tax were collected to Hindus. Next subheading is Judicial Administration. The Sultan was a foundation of justice. His Darbar constituted the highest civil and criminal court of justice, where origin as well as appellate cases were heard. Next to the Sultan, The chief Qazi was the highest judicial authority during this period. The provinces, the governors, and the Qazis had judicial powers. Each town also had a Qazi. The Shariat or Muslim law in the provinces, the governors and the Qazis had judicial powers. Each town also had a Qazi. The Sharia or the Muslim law was followed in the administration of justice. The penal code was survived in those days. Capital punishment and physical torture were frequently awarded as punishments. Cutting off the limbs, driving nails into the body, pouring molten lead into the throat, and such other inhuman punishments were common in those days. Last subheading is military organization. The government of Delhi Sultan depended heavily on their army. The circumstances in which the Sultanate was placed always necessitated the existence of a strong army. Hence, they bestowed much attention on the Turkish model. The military reforms of Alauddin Khilji resulted in the greater controlization of the army. The cavalry was the most important branch of the army of the Sultan. It was their supreme superiority in this branch of the army which helped them to win against the Indians. The infantry was the next important branch of the army. Elephant were also used for the next important materials. The infantry was the next important branch of the army. Elephants were also used for the next important materials. The army during the Sultanate had no permanent commander-in-chief. The Sultan himself was the commander-in-chief. But wherever an expedition was sent, a commander-in-chief was appointed. For example, Malik Kafur was appointed as the commander-in-chief for the southern expedition by Alauddin Khilji. This is Dilly Sultanate administration system. And in next class, we will discuss the Dilly Sultanate period socio-economic, religious policies, and sculpture, and literature. Okay. Today time is over. Tomorrow will be continued the class. Okay, thank you, Amma.
Thank you, sir.